So we are now on our 11th video or 11th module, which will be about PFRS 11 for joint arrangements. Well, bago tayo mag-start, shout out pala sa NUJP. Nakausap ko sila last weekend. And nanonood din sila ng mga lecture videos. Randomly nakita daw nila ako sa YouTube. So, hello sa inyo. Wait lang, may pa-shoutout eh. Shoutout daw kay Angelica Narvarte, sabi ni Sandra Cayetano. Sandra was the one who interviewed me last weekend at sana may napulot kayo. Pero, ayun, I'm glad na nare-reach ng video na to yung other universities din, yung mga ibang students who are having difficulties with their online classes. So, thankful din ako na nakita nyo tong video na to. May request pala si NUJP, they are asking bakit daw wala akong intro sa YouTube. Kung kailan patapos na yung semester, saka nyo ako hinahanapan ng intro, no? Wala nga akong maisip. Kaya hello lang yung intro ko. So, ituloy na natin, no? Pag may suggestion kayo ng intro, sige, open naman ako. Pag-usapan natin yan. Pero now, we'll proceed with our discussion and now for the shoutouts. So, we'll discuss ano ba yung joint control, the definition from PFRS 11, and then what's a joint arrangement, types, and how do we account for joint arrangements. Okay? For the definition of the joint control, ito yung definition based on PFRS 11. Ang keywords na makikita mo dito is the sharing of control and unanimous consent. So, dapat daw merong sharing of control and unanimous consent. Meaning, ano yan eh, all or nothing. Parang one for all for one. So, dapat lahat mag-a-agree. May isa lang na hindi mag-agree dyan, hindi matutuloy yung mga relevant activities nung joint control or joint operations. Okay? So, unanimous consent means any party can prevent any of the other parties from making unilateral decisions about the relevant activities. Take note of the keyword relevant activities nung joint arrangement na yon without its consent. So, dapat lahat mag-agree. Kaya siya joint control. Merong sharing of control requiring for unanimous consent. Okay. Example ng joint control. So, first example, kunwari ito, 3 parties, si A 50%, B 30%, si C 20%. The contractual arrangement between A, B, and C specifies that at least 75% of the voting rights are required to make decisions about the relevant activities of the arrangement. Meaning, dapat daw, bago matuloy yung isang relevant activity, mag-agree yung 75% voting rights. Tapos ang hatian nila, 50, 30, 20. Meron bang joint control dito? The answer is, yes, may joint control between A and B. Kasi kailangan sa kahit na anong, para makabuo sila ng 75%, mag-agree at the very least. Or hindi, mag-agree talaga si A and B. Okay. Pag hindi nag-agree si A, magkakaroon ka lang ng 50% at most. So, hindi matutuloy. Pag hindi nag-agree si B, magkakaroon ka lang ng 70% at most. So, hindi pa rin matutuloy kasi kailangan 75% and up. Pag hindi nag-agree si C, okay lang kasi meron ng 80% from A and B. So, there's joint control between A and B. Okay. Next example. Ang arrangement ko naman, meron kang 50, 25, 25 between A, B, and C respectively. Now, the contractual arrangement between A, B, and C specifies na ulit 75% dapat. Meron ka bang joint control dito? The answer is pwede, joint control between A, B, and C as long as the contractual arrangement would need to specify which combinations of the parties is required to agree unanimously for it to be classified as joint arrangement. So, magiging joint arrangement siya kung yung kontrata mo, the contract behind this will specify ano ba yung combination na dapat na mag-approve. Is it A and B or A and C? So, pwede siyang maging joint control between either A and B or A and C. Okay? The last example for joint control is meron kang 35, 35, and 30. The 30% being owned by a lot of other parties, widely dispersed. So, butil-butil yung may-ari ng 30%. Decisions about the relevant activities require approval by majority, meaning more than 50% of the voting rights. The answer is, meron kang joint control between A and B if the contractual arrangement as specified so na dapat mag-agree si A and B dun sa mga decision making. Kasi pwedeng control lang yan kung walang agreement na si A and B. Kung walang specific provision na dapat si A and B yung mag-agree for the relevant activities. Okay, next. Joint arrangement. Now, a joint arrangement is an arrangement of which two or more parties have joint control. So, pwedeng 3, pwedeng 4, pwedeng 5, basta more than two parties have joint control. So, dapat meron kang sharing of control and unanimous consent doon sa two or more parties. So, para malaman mo kung within the scope of PFRS 11 siya, tingnan mo, does the contractual arrangement give all the parties or group of parties control collectively? If no, outside the scope. Pero if yes, tingnan mo ulit, do decisions about relevant activities significantly affect the returns? And require that the unanimous consent of all parties or group of parties that collectively control the arrangement. So, meron kang, ando na naman, merong sharing of control, merong unanimous consent. If yes, if no, outside the scope. If yes, it's within the scope of PFRS 11. And if it's within the scope of PFRS 11, then tingnan mo muna. Anong type of joint arrangement siya? Is it JO or joint operation or JV or joint venture? So, ang pinagkaiba nila, kapag sinabi mong joint operations, the parties have direct rights to the assets or direct obligations for the liabilities relating to arrangement. Ang tawag dun sa mga parties na may joint control sa isang joint operation ay joint operator. Okay. For joint venture naman, wala kang specific right dun sa specific assets or specific obligations dun sa specific liabilities. Rather, meron kang rights to the net assets as a whole. So, ang tawag mo dun sa parties ng isang joint venture ay joint venturers. Okay, tingnan natin ha. I-explore pa natin. So, paano mo malalaman kung JO or JV siya? Tingnan mo. Is it arranged or structured through a separate vehicle? When you say separate vehicle, it's either a separately incorporated entity or a division of an entity that maintains its own books. So, meron siyang sariling libro or separately incorporated siya. That's a separate vehicle. Kapag hindi siya separate vehicle, automatically JO yon. Okay? Pero kapag separate vehicle siya, tingnan mo pa. Tingnan mo yung legal form, the terms of the agreement, and other factors and circumstances. Yun bang tatlong yon, it indicates na yung investors meron siyang direct rights to the assets or direct obligations to the liabilities. Kapag meron siyang direct rights or direct obligations, JO siya. Kapag wala, JV siya. So, in short, kapag JO, na-identify mo ano-ano yung assets na owned mo. Yun bang assets na nasa left kay JO letter A, or yung assets na nasa right kay JO letter B, or yung liabilities mo kay creditor A, is it the liability of one of the joint operator? So, kapag specific asset or specific liability yung interest mo dun sa joint arrangement, that is a joint operation. Pero, kapag net assets na, buo na, isahan na yung interest mo dun sa vehicle na yon. So, joint ventures are always structured through a separate vehicle. So, kapag hindi mo na alam kung ano din yung specific na sa'yo, basta, kunwari, 50% of the net assets I own ko, interest under my interest. So, that's a joint venture. How do we account for JO and JV? Kaya importante na malaman mo kung JO or JV siya kasi magkaiba sila ng accounting. Kapag joint operation, i-recognize mo separately yung assets, liabilities, revenues, share sa revenue, and expenses. Ang tawag dyan, line-by-line consolidation. So, i-recognize mo lahat ng mga identified assets and liabilities mo from the joint arrangement. Kapag naman joint venture, you use the equity method. Remember the equity method we discussed previously? through parent accounting, the accounting of the parent company, it's the same concept that we apply for the joint venture equity method. Tingnan natin sa problem. Problem number one, joint operation, no separate vehicle. Kasi again, di ba, ang JO, pwede siyang may separate vehicle, pwedeng wala. Pero ang JV, lagi siyang may separate vehicle. Okay. First example, kapag yung JO mo, no separate vehicle, so automatic kapag no separate vehicle, JO siya. The problem, because the scale of the project exceeded the capacity of the entities A and B, meaning si A alone hindi niya kayang i-complete yung project, si B alone hindi niya kayang i-complete yung project. So nag-form sila ng contract to enter into a joint venture. Okay? So ang tawag dito, tingnan natin ha. They tendered jointly for a public contract with the government to construct waterways between two cities. Kasi minsan ito, yung lalo na kapag government projects, malalaki yung capacity na kailangan mo. So, possibly, hindi siya kayang i-fulfill ng isang party. So, pwede kang mag-enter into another entity to fulfill that whole obligation. Following the tender process, the government awarded the contract jointly to A and B. In accordance with the contractual arrangements, AA and BB are jointly contracted with the government for delivery of the waterways in return for the contract cost is a fixed price contract of 39.2 million. Now, in 2020, in accordance with the agreement, AA and BB use their own equipment and employees. So, kanya-kanya sila talaga. Hindi sila nag-form ng another incorporated entity or hindi sila nag-form ng separate vehicle na may sariling libro. Hindi kanya-kanya sila. So, AA constructed 3 bridges, kanya-kanyang gawa din sila, kanya-kanyang cost. Si BB din, may sarili siyang kinonstruct na other elements of the waterways, may sarili din siyang cost. AA and BB shared equally in the revenue. Yun lang yung share nila, yung revenue. Pero ang sabi, equally daw, so hatiin mo yung revenue. Tagalahati din sila ng in-invoice sa government. Requirements, determine the net income ni AA and net income ni BP. The solution is, magkano yung revenue? 39.2 shared equally between AA and BB. So, divide by 2 mo lang siya. That will be 19.6 million each. Yung cost, may separate silang cost si AA saka si BB. So, i-minus mo sila. May kanya-kanya silang net income. So, yun yung sinasabi mo for JO with no separate vehicle. Yung operations nung joint venture na yon, ginawa pa din sa libro yung existing na libro ni na AA and BB. So, recognize mo lang yung assets and liabilities kung meron. In this case, ang meron mo lang revenues and costs. So, recognize it separately in their separate books. Ang paano nire-record yan, edi yung usual lang na revenue sa cost na recording. What if, example number 2, meron kang joint operation pero separate vehicle. Tingnan natin ha. On January 1, entity KK, together with another joint operator, set up a separate vehicle to undertake a joint operation. The arrangement provides for both parties to have joint control over the separate vehicle. So, merong incorporated entity. For its capital contribution, si KK nagbayad ng 300,000 initially. Apart from its assets and liab, binigay yung share ni KK sa PPE, 60%, sa current assets, 50%, sa liability, 75%, sa revenue, 55%, sa expenses, 60%. So, makikita mo kaagad dito di ba direct yung interest niya sa assets, liabilities, revenue, expenses. So, definitely, it's a joint operation. So, binigay din yung results ng separate vehicle. Meron kang balance sheet, meron kang income statement. Requirements, journal entry sa libro ni joint operator entity KK. And magkano yung share niya sa net income ng joint operation. Okay, let's present the journal entry sa libro ni KK. Una, nagbayad siya ng 300,000 for the initial investment. So, that will be, parang nireclass mo lang yung cash mo. So, debit cash in joint operation, credit cash, yung normal na cash niya. To indicate lang na nilipat mo yung cash dun sa separate vehicle. Then next, i-recognize mo separately yung assets, liabilities, revenues, expenses mo. For the current assets, you have 50%. So, yung 600,000 na current assets ni separate vehicle times the 50% interest niya, 300,000. PPE is 1 million times 60%, 600,000. Expenses is 600,000 times 60%, 360,000. Liability, 75% of the 800,000, that will be 600,000. Revenue, 55% of the, magkano revenue ni separate vehicle? 1 million. So, that will be 550,000. Then, yung balancing niya will be for the cash. Net credit, so reduction in cash. Parang nagbayad ka ng net assets. For the 110,000 pesos. So, ang ending balance niya dun ng cash, dun sa joint operation, will be 300,000 na debit minus 110,000. That will be 200, kita mamali ako mag-minus, 190,000. 190,000, tama ba? Tama. Next, na pinapahanap, magkano yung share in net income. Share in net income will be, magkano yung share nyo sa revenue, 550,000. Share nyo sa expenses, 360,000. So, your share in net income is 190,000. Next. So, that's it. That's for the joint operations. How about for joint venture? So, joint venture, definitely meron kang separate vehicle na inorganize for that. So, the problem is, on January 1, two real estate companies, si Packet and Sacket, set up a separate vehicle, si Harrison Company. The contractual arrangement between the parties establishes joint control. So, meron daw silang joint control, sinabi na niya. The main feature is that the entity, not the parties, has rights to the assets. So, yun, walang net assets talaga yung interest no dalawang joint venturers mo. So, wala siyang direct rights dun sa assets or direct obligations dun sa liabilities. Meron silang interest dun sa net assets ng separate vehicle. Definitely, that's a joint venture. Let's continue. Si Packet daw nagbayad siya ng si Packet is one of the joint venturers. Nagbayad siya ng 1.6 million for 40% investment in the separate vehicle. Okay, requirement, journal entries in the books of the Packet company. Sabi natin kapag joint venture, definitely it's accounted for under the equity method. So, pag equity method, ang entry mo pag initial investment, debit investment in joint venture, credit cash, 1.6 million. Then the receipt of dividends will be reduction of the investment. Diba? Kapag naka-receive ka ng dividends, parang return of investment mo yun under the equity method. So you have, magkano yung na-receive niya? 50,000 shares times 2 pesos per share, dividend. That is 100,000. So debit cash, credit investment in JV, 100,000. For the share in net income, pag nag-income si joint venture mo, meron kang increase in the investment in joint venture. Debit investment in joint venture, credit income from joint venture, computed as, magkano yung share mo? 40% times 560,000 pesos given yung net income. So, that's it. If you have questions, please do let me know. Thank you!